The state has rested its case. Testimony officially ended an hour ago in the Alec Murdaugh double murder trial.
To the objection of the defense, the state called 6 rebuttal witnesses today.
It's day 26 of the trial where Murdaugh is accused of killing his wife and son. Our team coverage continues in Walterboro with Ann McGill, Blair Sable, and Michael Higdon. And where do we stand? Is testimony done? What's next?
Well, Rob and Cameron, testimony completely done now for both the prosecution and the defense after those rebuttal witnesses called today. And before the court dismissed for the day, the judge made an announcement. He said that first thing tomorrow morning, members of the jury would be escorted out to Moselle to view the site where the brutal killings of Maggie and Paul occurred on that Monday evening of June 7th, 2021. Now, getting back to today, the state called a total of 6 rebuttal witnesses, and one of them was a law enforcement expert named Dr. Kenneth Kinsey. Blair Sable joining us now live. And Blair, Dr. Kinsey had a lot of opinions about the conclusions that were presented earlier by the defense's expert.
Yeah, and Kenneth Kinsey had a lot of choice words to describe the defense expert's opinions, from flawed to unscientific to downright preposterous. Kinsey quite simply said that you could not rule out a shooter as tall as Alec Murdaugh based on the evidence that was gathered from the crime scene, and this is a direct rebuke to what the experts for the defense had to say, testifying that the shooter should have been between 5 feet 2 inches and 5 feet 4 inches tall. Alan Wilson had Kinsey demonstrate for the jurors kneeling to disprove this. The pair, they also used a shotgun from evidence to demonstrate just how difficult it would have been for a gunman to shoot Paul from the outside of the feed room and then to enter that room to shoot Paul in the back of his head with that same long firearm. Now, that's a theory that's been brought forth by the defense's experts. Kinsey called it a fluid and dynamic crime scene, meaning everyone and everything was moving at the time. And he says there are just too many unknowns and variables to make exact conclusions.
The defense witness is relying on math and absolute. And in crime scene investigation, sometimes there are no absolutes.
Well, Kinsey also said that because of the matches in shell casings found outside the gun room and around Maggie's body, it was likely a family-owned gun that was used to gun Maggie down, that harkening back to some earlier testimony that we heard at the very beginning of this trial. And Kinsey, he ate up most of the afternoon. He was the longest witness to take the stand today, whereas out of all the 6 witnesses, the shortest one lasted less than 10 minutes on the stand. Ann.
All right, Blair, thank you very much. Now, both sides spent a good amount of time today. They spent that time questioning the forensic pathologist who testified on behalf of the state. Michael Higdon was live inside of the courtroom for us, listening to that testimony firsthand. Michael, before you begin your report, we want to warn our viewers that a lot of that detail today, it was very graphic.
Yeah, and it's testimony that we have heard before, but this time going into more of those gruesome details. The state called Dr. Ellen Reamer back to the stand because she is the forensic pathologist who did the autopsies of Maggie and Paul. Yesterday, we heard from 2 defense witnesses who actually disagreed with Dr. Reamer's findings, saying that the head wound that Paul sustained would have been from a contact shot, meaning it was flush against his head. Dr. Reamer says that's not the case, and that shot entered his shoulder and then went up through his skull. She went into very graphic detail, and Alec could be seen crying and rocking back and forth through a majority of this testimony. She also said that while Paul's injuries were gruesome, if it had been a contact shot, he would not have had a face left. Defense attorney Dick Harpootlian also has been outwardly frustrated today, especially when questioning Dr. Reamer, because it goes against what his experts testified to based on certain materials they were given.
It doesn't matter. I can look at my photos. I can look. If you're going to talk about theory, the photos.
Your Honor, I'd ask you. I would ask you to tell the witness to be responsive. She is going on a diatribe. Excuse me. I'm asking the court to instruct her to answer the question as specifically as she can. She goes off on tangents, and I'm sorry.
Harpootlian, you may continue answering the question. how this could have played out.
Well, Dr. Reamer also says that not every little detail would have been in her autopsy notes, but she stands by her findings because she is the one who physically did the autopsies themselves. And the jury, I will say, still very interested in her testimony, many leaning forward to see the photos as she was explaining certain things. Reporting live in Colleton County, I'm Michael Higdon, and back to you.
Thank you, Michael. Now again, tomorrow morning, first thing, the next phase of the trial will take the jurors to the site of the brutal killings of Paul and Maggie. They will be visiting Moselle tomorrow morning. They will be going there along with the attorneys. The judge will also allow the media to go along for that part of the proceedings. And then when they return to court tomorrow morning, there will be closing arguments from both sides. And that means that there is a good possibility that by the end of this week, the jury could announce whether Alec Murdaugh is guilty or not guilty of killing his wife and son. Reporting live outside of the Colleton County Courthouse in Walterboro, Ann McGill, Live 5 News.
All right, Ann, Michael, and Blair, thank you so much. Remember, you can always follow along with our coverage of Alec Murdaugh's murder trial every weekday wherever you watch Live 5 News. You can also follow along with the latest developments of the trial on live5news.com.